So how's it going, my comics and armor? We're here today with Shane Chebsey, the creator of Dinosaurs versus Cowboys, Black Forest, and Hedrick, Night of the Museum. Right?
Cool. Yeah. Well, you almost got it right, man. You almost got it right.
What did I mess up on?
So it's Shane Chebsey.
What did I say?
Chebsey. You know, that is the most common one. We were just talking offline before about pronunciation, and that I can't avoid the irony there. But it's cool. I'm so cool with it. Everybody makes that mistake, so that's cool. No thumbs down from me. So yeah, it's Shane Chebsey, and it's Night of the Mummers is the title of Hedrick. But a lot of people don't know what mummers are. It's quite an unusual folk heritage type thing. They're quite big in Canada, and they're quite big here in the UK. It's basically people dressing up, doing theatre, and sometimes it can be quite macabre or sort of horrific in the way that they approach it. Sometimes it can be fun, kids' entertainment. But in this book, they were sort of vigilantes, dressing up as mummers. So you'd have things like Father Christmas, Johnny Jack, Punch and Judy, those sort of characters, which are from folklore, you know. But these were serious characters, causing all sorts of trouble for a detective constable, a chief inspector, called Hedrick Stern, who is the sort of protagonist of the comic. And we've just released actually the softback of Hedrick, which is now in reverse, I see. But that just came out, and it's going out to backers at the moment, and it will be also in comic shops early next year, I believe. We got an order from Diamond, so people in the States can get Hedrick quite easily without having to order it from me in the UK. It will be in American comic shops. So there you go.
That's so cool. Like that you just explained what mummers are. That's so cool. That is, I'm gonna have to look into that after this interview. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Read up on it, man. There's a lot of history. There's a lot of folklore, not just here in the UK, but in Canada, it's quite big. In Europe, and in America as well. You do get mummers in America, but it tends to be more sort of as you go north, the further north you go. In Canada, there's quite a tradition. All over the world, there are different types of traditions of mummers. When you Google it, you get them from all over the world, all these wacky costumes. And some of them are quite terrifying, actually, because it'll be like a horse's skull for a head or something like that. And some of them are really well made, really intricate. And well, some of them is just like somebody putting a pillowcase on the head and drawing a face on it. You know, it really does vary.
So are they good guys? Do y'all?
Well, in real life, yes, they're jokers mostly, you know. Okay. But in Hedrick, they're vigilantes, and some of the group take things too far, and that's when it comes to the police attention. It's set in sort of southwest of England, so that's where there's a lot of folklore. So this cop. He's sort of a guy he's respected by his colleagues, but he's a bit eccentric himself, and he's been through a lot of trauma in his life. And he's got this case, you know, investigating these mummer murders, as they call them. So there have been murders. Some of these guys have taken people out, and then they realise that there's a pattern to the murders. They're actually vigilantes. They're taking out child molesters. They're taking out corrupt politicians, and then he gets involved. And there's all sorts of intrigue and betrayal as the series goes on, and he gets in a lot of danger, and he uncovers this massive conspiracy that is a lot more than just these mummers randomly killing people. And as the story unfolds, it sort of draws you in. You know, it's quite macabre. It's folk horror at the end of the day, but there's this detective element to it as well. So if you like a good detective story, Hedrick's a really great read, and it's drawn by Dave Hitchcock, who won an Eagle Award for, I think it was for Whitechapel Freak, or it could have been for Spring-Heeled Jack. Two great books he did that I never remember which one got the Eagle Award. He's going to kill me if you see.
I interview a guy from Canada that's made a book and based his comic character off Spring-Heeled Jack.
Oh, really? Yeah, I mean, it's such an interesting character. It's shrouded in mystery, isn't it? Was he an alien? Was he just a guy in a suit? And I like the guy in the suit angle actually better because it's more sort of interesting if you're writing a character. If it's just an alien, it's just another alien story. So, but yeah, and David's approach was the guy in the suit approach, but it was sort of a steampunk thing. If I highly recommend it. David Hitchcock's Spring Heel Jack. It's absolutely brilliant book. Yeah.
I'm going to check it out. And what is Black Forest about?
So Black Forest is an anthology of stories, all written by Peter Hogan. You may know Peter Hogan. He wrote some Tom Strong stuff. He also is the co-creator of Resident Alien, which is a smash hit TV series at the moment. So he approached me at a comic convention because we'd done some work together on a short horror story before, which in the end never got published. And he said, I'd want to publish this and I would like to do some other horror stories as well, see if I can actually scare people. And he had this idea of an anthology of horror stories that were all written by him, but drawn by different artists. So Black Forest is the result of that. And we brought in some amazing artists to draw the stories, including Glenn Fabry, who you may have heard of, worked 2000 AD, done those iconic covers for Preacher. Loads of really cool stuff, to be honest. He's a bit of a legend. So Glenn did a story, Jimmy Broxton did a story, Rafa, what's Rafa's surname? It's gone out of my head. Rafa Labosco, who's done James Bond. I think he's currently doing Thundercats. So some really big, decent names were in there, and of course Steve Parkhouse, who was the co-creator of Resident Alien, also does a story in Black Forest. And there's other artists as well. Mark Stafford. It's a really good collection of people producing some really good work. Beautiful stuff. It really is. But they're short, self-contained stories, so it's a book that you can just pick up and enjoy. There's a piece of entertainment. It's not something that you have to have, all the issues to or anything like that. So I quite like publishing stuff like that is just a one-off. I like the idea of people being able to just pick something up, enjoy it, put it down, and if it's traumatized them, try and forget about it.
Is Black Forest out now? Can people get it from their comic shop?
They can order it from their comic shop. I believe it was in the September previews. But obviously you can still back order it. It's available in all comic shops that are supplied by Diamond. I think Late Pledges is still open on the Kickstarter as well. So you can pick it up from us via the Kickstarter. But I will be closing Late Pledges on that soon because we're going to be fulfilling it very soon because it's going to print. We're just waiting for a couple of little bits from one of the artists to complete the book. So it's still in production, actually. But yeah, you can get it from your local comic shop. I think it's going to be out in January, if I remember correctly.
And Dinosaurs versus Cowboys?
Okay, that's the personal one for me, really. It was something that I've been talking to my friend Chris Macaulay about for a while. A couple of years ago, my father passed away, and I wanted to do something to sort of remember him by. And it was Chris's idea, actually, my co-creator on the book. He said, why don't you do this Dinosaurs versus Cowboys idea? Because that was something that was inspired by your dad. Because basically, when I was a kid, we used to love watching old dinosaur movies, old cowboy movies. And if you could get both in one movie, that was even better. So Valley of Gwangi is like one of my favorite movies of all time. And it's the first movie I ever watched as a child. I think I was about 3. And obviously at 3 years old, an allosaur eating people was terrifying. But I watched it with my dad. I watched it with my dad. It's a happy memory with my dad. So that book's dedicated to the memory of my dad. And it is basically an homage to movies of the 20th century that featured dinosaurs, stuff like Land That Time Forgot, Valley of Gwangi, all those sort of things, Journey to the Center of the Earth, that sort of pulpy sort of adventure stuff that me and my dad used to enjoy together, and westerns as well. Westerns is a medium, a genre that I always loved, and I realized later on in life the reason I loved it is because my dad loved it. I had no choice.
So, how long have you been making comics for?
Ooh, well, it's actually 30 years this year.
30?
Yeah, 30
Congrats!
years.
Hell yeah! Yeah.
1994. Obviously, in 1994, I had no idea what I was doing. I'll say that. I wasn't making good comics, but I was making comics. And I published an anthology very pretentiously called Comic Artists of the Future. Oh my gosh. At the tender age of, I think I was 20, 21, something like that. And maybe 22, and it was featuring all my friends, basically myself as well. I was drawing back then. I used to draw comics, write comics, and my friends from college, basically, and the local area. And that was how I started. I used to photocopy them, staple them myself. This is the days before desktop publishing. Well, it was there, but it was embryonic. People, it was all by hand and photocopiers. I still have the big staple gun that I used to staple my comics together with is still here.
Yeah.
It's a reminder of how I started.
Yeah.
It's good days, good fun.
Oh yeah. How have you seen indie comics change over the last 30 years?
Oh wow, it's just been so different. I mean, I remember because for a while I was a distributor of indie comics from sort of 1999 to about 2011, something like that. I had a company called Small Zone, and I distributed indie comics to shops and directly through a website. So I've seen the changes, very, very in a lot of detail. And it went from photocopied books for the most part to really well-designed, well-put-together indie books that could sit next to any of the mainstream books on the shelf and with equal quality, And then obviously the advent of, so you had desktop publishing, which was a huge thing for indie publishers, cheaper printing, which was a huge thing for indie, and then Kickstarter and crowdfunding in general, which then catapulted indie books into the mainstream, really. I don't think it's ever been as healthy and diverse indie publishing as it's been previously. I think it's more healthy now than it's ever been. People say, "Oh, comics are dying," and all that, the naysayers and all that sort of stuff. I see something very different. Yes, the old way is dying. The old way of doing comics is dying, and comics themselves have to evolve. They or die, and part of that evolution, I think, is indie publishing, is crowdfunding. It will change to something else. I think we're sort of in a transitional period for comics. I think it'll go on to something completely different that we maybe couldn't predict today in the next sort of 10 years. But I think the medium will survive. People love comic storytelling, and people say, "Oh, kids don't read comics anymore." But you give kids comics, and they're like, "Oh, these are great." They just can't buy them from anywhere. That's the problem. Distribution.
And I think the internet has helped people break into the industry, and I think it's made the industry have to give people better contracts, because you can't just do shady back deal doors without,
Oh, definitely. I think more people are more savvy now. I think creators are more savvy about their rights. And that's big thanks to people like Todd McFarlane. And you go further back, Neil Adams. There's always been this movement of creator rights that started sort of in the early 80s, I guess, but continued then into the 90s with Image Comics, and it still continues now. People are still, I still see chat groups on Facebook, for example, where people are asking about their rights, and still people aren't sure, about where they stand as an artist when they create some work, but at least they're asking the questions. At least it's a subject that's on the table. And I think that, we've made great advancements, but there's still more to go, I think. Definitely.
What social medias are you on?
So mostly I'm old, so I'm mostly on Facebook, I am on X. I don't really use it much though. I've never really got along with it. On Blue Sky, Instagram, YouTube. I count that as social media, because that's pretty much what it is. And yeah, I used to do a podcast called a video podcast, a bit like this, called the Icecast Live. Unfortunately, my day job prohibits me from doing that at the moment, but I plan to launch it again as soon as I get a new day job, I guess. Don't tell my boss.
Yeah, right.
They won't be watching this. We're okay.
Dead or alive, who is your dream team to make a comic book with? Money's not an option.
Wow. Okay. That's a tricky one, isn't it? Dead or alive. So you go right back into history. I mean, if I was just going purely on the work, I would probably say Alex Toth. But apparently he was really difficult to get along with. And like being a publisher, I've worked with different types of people, and it's a dream when you get somebody who's really nice to get along with. So that's a really big factor. But some of my heroes, I don't know what they were like. So I would say I guess Alex Toth. Yeah. My favorite comic artist of all time would have to be. And as he was predominantly an artist, I suppose I have to pick a writer to work with him. It'd probably be Alan Moore. It's not an original thought, I know, but just an absolutely amazing comic writer. I mean, imagine Alan Moore and Alex Toth. That. Whew.
Yeah, right. What's some do's and don'ts for people when they're with a publisher or trying to get with a publisher?
As in sort of how to apply, I guess, or send in a portfolio or something like that. I mean, there's some really common don'ts that keep occurring that I have to say about it. And that is always read the submission guidelines, and follow them. That's the biggest one, to be honest, because the amount of people that don't is staggering. You'll say a specific thing like, don't send me superhero books, for example, because we don't publish superhero books as a rule. I'm not saying I never will, because I love superheroes, and one day someone might come to me with an idea and I think, oh yeah, we'll do that. But I'm not, I say don't send them because it's likely I'm not going to pick it up. But I still get loads of superhero submissions, and things like that. So follow the guidelines, be professional. That is the number one. Be easy to work with. So I think it was Dave Gibbons who once said to me that, there are the 3 rules, and you must have heard this before, I'm sure, that to get along in the comic industry is be nice, be good, or be fast. And if you can be 2 of those things, you'll get along. So if you're nice and fast, people will forgive if you're not so good, But if you're really, really good and you're really, really fast, you just got to be 2 of them. So I always say, try and be 3, all 3 of them if you can, because you will get along. If you're going to a publisher, if you follow the guidelines, you're nice to deal with, you act professionally, you don't have a huge ego, your work is really, really good, and you work really hard, and you have a good work ethic. All those things, they seem so obvious, don't they? But it's a lot of people. I say a lot of people. There are a certain amount of people who will, not abide by that. Who think maybe they're above that. So never think you're above the job that you're trying to do. Never think that, you're working together as a team. You're not better than the publisher, and the publisher isn't better than you. You're working together to produce something, and I think that's a good attitude to have, in my opinion, anyway.
Is there anything you want to say before we go?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Cody, for the opportunity to talk to you and to talk about our books. I do want to plug one more thing, which is a Kickstarter I've got running right now, which is called Shadows of the Stokerverse. It's not actually a comic, but it is an illustrated storybook expanding the world of Dracula, with art by the legendary Clint Langley, who's best known for Slain at 2000 AD, but also does loads and loads of cool stuff for Warhammer 40K. An absolutely amazing illustrator, and I'm really lucky to be able to be working with him and Dacre Stoker and Chris McCauley, who are creators of the Stokerverse. So that's running now. I think we've got about 9 days left, and we're still heading towards the target. So all pledges do help. So thank you for that, and thanks again for the opportunity to talk to you. It's been really nice.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate you taking the time to come talk with me.
No worries, man.
What? You mean you haven't subscribed to Comic Chat Authority? Oh, come on. Subscribe already. What are you waiting for? It's no big deal. Like, man, don't forget to tell him to hit that like button. Yeah, that too. Just subscribe.